Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you tonight activist and film producer, the brother of Julian Assange, Gabriel Shipton. Gabriel Shipton, it is amazing to have you here. We are so excited to have you. Now, look, it's brought people together around the world, the Free Assange movement. You've got murals, Free Assange graffiti seen on buildings, roadsides, there's posters by hideaways around the world. The sheer size of the campaign is just mind-blowing. How does it feel to see that level of support for your brother?
Well, Des, it's really heartening to see, the amount of support that's out there. As you say, there's those street level type support, activists out on the streets, as well as these posters, graffitis. But that all feeds up into the political world as well. So we've got the support of the Australian Parliament, as well as world leaders like Olaf Scholz, who's called on the UK to block Julian's extradition, and even the Pope, who held an audience with Stella Assange last year. And more importantly, in the United States Congress, we have Congress people, real allies in the Congress who are supporting calls for Julian to be freed. And this is all, it's a lot to do with Julian's human rights, but it's also more to do with how this unprecedented prosecution affects Americans or affects Germans or affects all these people over the world and their right to know what governments are doing in their name and their rights to freedom of expression.
Yeah, it is. It's extraordinarily. It's amazing that the movement has such fervor behind it. But it's not surprising because, as you say, people have a right to know what their governments are doing, and it's alarming the kinds of things they cover up. And look, speaking of governments, it's becoming clear that political pressure is really mounting on U.S. leaders as the case becomes more and more draining. How is the whole ordeal playing out for the U.S. government? And do you think their commitment to Julian's extradition or imprisonment is waning, perhaps?
Yeah, I believe it is. This is a political hot potato for the Biden administration. Julian's avenues in the UK courts are coming to an end. He only has one final appeal application that has a decision pending. And if that is refused, they could order his extradition. And I think it's the last thing the Biden administration wants is the world's most famous journalist in shackles arriving on US shores in the lead up to an election. It's a really bad look for an administration that likes to preach about press freedom all over the world. To have Julian Assange, imprisoned on their shores. So I think this political pressure is really, wearing down the political will behind this prosecution. And so I think now we're seeing that there's actually quite a bit of goodwill to be taken up for the Biden administration if they go ahead and drop this. We've seen Robert Kennedy Jr., who has had pardoning Julian as part of his platform since the beginning of his campaign. And it really hasn't, adversely affected his popularity. It's probably added to his popularity. So I think the political circumstances are changing and there is goodwill out there for people who are willing to come out and take a stand for Julian.
And that's what I find interesting. There is so much goodwill out there for Julian, for all the things that he's done. So my question is, look, yeah, as you say, RFK has come out and said he supports him. But why at this point do you think neither Donald Trump or Joe Biden has taken an official position on freeing or not freeing Julian Assange yet?
Well, we've seen Trump Jr., Donald Trump's son, appeared a couple of times on a political podcast in the United States, and he was asked, have you changed your position on Assange? And he's said that he has changed his position on Julian. Previously he thought that Julian needed to spend time in prison and be punished for what he did, but now he is saying that he sees the corruption that's been exposed, the mismanagement of tax dollars, the war crimes, the torture, all these things that Julian exposed, and he thinks that's healthy for the American democracy now. So I think you see Trump Jr. really putting out these sort of messages and sort of laying the ground for the Trump administration to test the waters on this. Similarly, you have just yesterday an article in the Wall Street Journal where sources from within the DOJ are testing the waters with a potential plea deal that they say is on the table for Julian. But Julian's lawyers have said that they haven't heard from the Department of Justice, and they're still pursuing Julian with gusto. So I think you are seeing this shift now from potentially an incoming Trump administration, but also from a Biden administration DOJ, that they're looking to really bring this to a close because of this political hot potato that it has become.
And it is such a hot potato. That's such a great way of putting it. And as of course, this upcoming US election just has massive stakes for your family. I have to ask, what, if anything, do you expect from each candidate if they are elected regarding your brother's freedom? Do you think Biden might do something different to Trump, or will they do the same thing? If you had a crystal ball, is there any way you can predict it, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I've been watching more and more American politics, and I'm surprised every day at what's going on over there from both sides. So I wouldn't want to make a bet either way. But as a campaign, we have to work both sides, and this is a bipartisan issue. We always win the political realm. We always work bipartisanly with both sides of politics, left and right, because this is an issue of principle, an issue of democratic principles, the fourth estate. And so that's really how we're working. We're not trying to, put ourselves in one camp or the other, because, that's not really, I don't think that's the benefit for Julian in the end.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, you need absolutely to work with both sides here, because you don't know who's going to go in and when. And look, as you said, this is a matter of principle. It's very clear to me and to so many other people that this punishment of Julian is really disproportionate to what he's done. And I think it has been so disproportionate because of the American military-industrial complex. I mean, he really embarrassed the US government because they really deserved to be embarrassed. Do you think it's that military-industrial complex that has been the driving force behind this persecution of your brother?
Yes, certainly. I mean, you can draw it back to 2017 when WikiLeaks published Vault 7. Vault 7 was the hacking tools of the CIA. And these hacking tools were tools that were used to hack into people's phones, to turn people's televisions into listening devices that the CIA had actually lost control of. So they'd lost control. These tools were out in the wild, and WikiLeaks brought that to global attention, to everyone's benefit, really, to show that these tools are out there. They're not just being used by the CIA, but by hackers and other bad actors around the world. And it was at that point that the Pompeo, under Mike Pompeo, the CIA was extremely embarrassed about this, about letting these tools out in the open. And that's when we saw a real ramping up of Julian's persecution, with Mike Pompeo making a statement in his first public speech as CIA director that he was going to pursue Julian and he was going to make it his mission to go after WikiLeaks. And it's from then on that we really saw this ramping up of these clandestine operations against WikiLeaks, against Julian. There was reporting in the United States that there were plots to murder Julian, plots to kidnap Julian emanating from the Pompeo CIA, and that it was only when those kidnapping plots made it all the way to the White House that the Department of Justice said, wait until we get some charges in place, because if you take him from the embassy, what are you going to do with him? Are you going to send him to one of our black sites? So wait until we get some charges in place, and then you can pluck him out of the embassy. And so we can really see a timeline between those publishing these materials to the elevation of the prosecution and persecution of Julian Assange, culminating in 2019 when he was taken from the Ecuadorian embassy.
Yeah, it's really, really scary, the amount of power that those organizations in America had. It's really quite terrifying. Good news on the political front actually was something that happened in Australia in February. Our federal MPs passed a motion a couple of months ago to bring Julian home. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, that was great, and the timing was absolutely perfect. Just before the UK courts were about to have their 2-day appeal application hearing, it just was such a positive story that travelled all around the world and really let the courts in the UK know that, hey, the world is watching you. The Australian Parliament has called on you to bring this to an end, to return Julian back to Australia. And they even went further than that. They made clear in this resolution that Julian was being persecuted for his work as a journalist. That was very powerful and really moving for us, and I think really led to a different type of hearing where the judges had to really engage with the arguments. Usually they would come in and they would read off a judgment that they brought in the morning and heard evidence all day, and they would read the judgment that they brought in the morning, having already made up their mind. But this time around, they engaged with the arguments and they fleshed out what the prosecution was actually trying to do. They're trying to establish a precedent that could apply to any journalist in the United Kingdom, and I think the judges were taken aback by that.
Well, it was certainly a fantastic motion. I'm so pleased that it passed. And I have to ask you, I mean, this is more stress than I think any human being is designed to ever tolerate. And I just have to ask you this about Julian. How is he coping with all of this? It's just mind-blowing to me what he's going through.
Yeah, look, Des, I mean, I'm always amazed when I go and see Julian that he's able to keep his fighting spirit. He even keeps his sense of humor. He's got this black, dark sense of humor, and I think if that went away, then we'd be very worried, very, very worried about him. But he's always able to keep hold of that and keep going. But he is in decline, his physical health and his mental health, particularly when I went and saw him at the end of February. It was scary, as his brother, going to see him. You never know how you're going to find him in the prison. And I left feeling quite scared because you leave and there's nothing you can do for him. He's locked away in his cell, a 2-by-3 meter cell, up to 23, 22 hours a day, alone. His only lifeline to the outside world is these visits, and he gets phone calls with his family. So if those are taken away from him, then I don't know how he'll be able to hang on, and that's what we're really afraid of.
Yeah, why? I mean, pardon my ignorance, but why have they got him alone in there? Like, what's the sense in keeping him so totally isolated from the rest of the prison population? He's not a murderer. It's nothing like that. Why are they keeping him there alone?
It's a punishment by process. He's not. He shouldn't even be in jail in the first place. He's not. He's not charged in the United Kingdom with any crime. He's not serving a sentence. He's held only at the request of the US DOJ. So it's just it's a flex by the United States and by these, by these institutions. This is what we can do to you. If you embarrass us, if you expose our corruption, if you expose our crimes, you will have no rights. We can just take them all away from you, plop you in a jail, and lock you in a cell for 5 years. No guilty plea, no guilty charge or anything like that. So it's a real message that's been sent to journalists, to publishers, to anybody who tries to do this sort of thing, that this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, they really are making an example of him. It's absolutely terrible. And you do a really wonderful job of telling his story. You're actually a film producer at Shipton House. And you produced a 2022 documentary, Ithaca, The Fight to Free Julian Assange. It was directed by Ben Lawrence, who's won awards. We've actually got a little clip from the trailer here. Let's have a little look.
Can we talk about your contact with Julian through his childhood? It's part of the story, I think.
It isn't part of the story.
Yeah.
The story is that, I'm attempting in my own modest way to get Julian out of the ship.
Julian Assange is the hero of our time.
He was the darling of the left. All of a sudden, he's a puppet of Russia.
My name is John Shipton. I'm Julian Assange's father.
WikiLeaks found that Julian Assange has been arrested.
One of the most notorious and controversial figures in custody.
Assange will remain behind bars until that extradition hearing, which has been set down for the end of February.
I urge the Department of Justice to drop the charges.
The maximum jail sentence of 175 years.
Because he published the truth.
So moving. What was the reception to the documentary?
Well, it was received very well, critically acclaimed, 4-star reviews all over the world. We played all around the United States in theatres there. It's, available on ABC iView or Stan in Australia. It's also available on ITV in the United Kingdom. So, I was astonished by the reactions and really how people, became emotionally connected with our family and wanted to know more about Julian's story from a different perspective, from a very personal perspective, getting to know Julian through the people who love him most. So, always, going and seeing audiences and audiences reacting, people really becoming close to our family through this film has been a very special experience.
Oh, that's so fantastic. So remember, everyone, you can watch it on Stan. Fantastic. And what was the other one?
On the ABC iView
On ABC iView.
as well.
Fantastic. Everyone get along and watch it. It's a very important piece of work. Now, Gabriel, I have to ask, your brother, he's obviously a really special kind of human being. He's put his life and his freedom seemingly in perpetual jeopardy for the sake of doggedly pursuing the truth and to hold powerful people and institutions to account. This might be a silly question, but are you proud of him?
Yeah, immensely. I have so much admiration for Julian and what he's done and what he's, been able to do and how he's been able to hang on. I mean, I'm still learning from him every day. He's about resilience, about, caring for people and caring for justice for people and holding on to ideals. I think, I'm immensely proud and, full of admiration and love for Julian.
And what do you think it is about him that drives him to pursue the truth like this? Because it's a really unique quality that he has. I mean, he and Edward Snowden is the other one, but what is it? What is that quality that he has?
In one word, I think it's courage. He has the courage to stand up and use his skills that he has. His skills in technology, his skills in encryption, his understanding of the internet to create WikiLeaks and really push it forward and be courageous and stand up to these criminals, these war criminals, these murderers, these corrupt politicians and institutions that are spreading injustice around the world. And I think he has an immense intelligence and an incredible understanding of how the world works, how these institutions and corporations conspire against people and governments. But also, I think what really is at the heart of it is that courage, and that's, I think, very rare. I mean, Julian says, intelligence is a great asset, but courage is much rarer than intelligence. So, and I think you can see that. You see that across the world. And I think people like Snowden, people like Julian, are immensely courageous. I wish I could be just a little bit as courageous as them.
Well, you're very courageous in telling his story and petitioning for him as well as you do. So I think there's a bit of that family courage there in you as well, certainly. And now, look, Gabriel, just before we go, if you could take a magic wand and just make all of it go away for Julian, all of it go away, none of it's there anymore. What do you think the first thing that he would do would be? What would he like to do most?
Well, I think he'd like to relax and hang out with his kids. He's got two young sons. My nephews, Gabriel and Max, 5 and 6 years old. They've grown up knowing their father in prison. They've never known him in any other location or situation. So I think he'd like to take them, on a bushwalk in Australia, listen to the birds, go to the beach. Do all those things that us as Australians love and take for granted that Julian and his sons have been deprived of for the last 5 or 6 years. So that's what I'd love to see, is his family reunited with him. Yeah.
Well, look, we're all hoping and praying that one day soon that will really hopefully be the case. Gabriel Shipton, we have to let you go now, but you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the program this evening, and congratulations for your courage and your resilience. I do hope we see the best outcome possible as soon as possible.
Great. Thanks so much for having me on.